Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's Tech Talk time. It's the good old weekly podcast where, of course, we go over your comments from last time and also just a few news items and things like that. We got a bunch of planned BR changes yesterday, which was kind of surprising. So it was cool to see, but also at the same time, it's going to be a little bit odd, seeing what kind of goes on. So today we're going to get the Graz Amstetten operation done, and also the Off We Go one. So we'll see how that goes. It shouldn't be too bad as we kind of go through. But yeah, if you haven't checked out the BR changes, make sure to do so, because there is quite a lot of them that have changed around, and obviously it'll affect, different vehicles that you play and different vehicles that you enjoy. A lot of changes in jets again, which I feel like is just going to be the norm kind of going forward. So don't be surprised when all that stuff goes on. Hey, Sneaky, nice to see you. We're recording this on Saturday because I ended up playing. I ended up playing 10 hours of Manalord on Friday, just getting through it and getting it sorted. Nearly completed the scenario. Just have to deal with some El Banditos and grow a few other places. But yeah, it's a really fun game, and I've had a really good time with it. Good morning, Kenamondo. Nice to see you too. So yeah, let's get started with the different questions and also the different stuff that is kind of going on. We start off, obviously, with the timestamps from Max, so that's very kind of him. Thank you for doing that as always. And it's been nice that people have afforded their time for this stuff, so thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for doing things like this. I think generally it's a very kind thing, and I try and reward as much as I can, but you never feel like it's enough. Then we have Roof Korean. But past the Devs Air, which is upcoming, please recommend the B-36 or B-32 Dominator. I mean, I could do. The Past of the Devs is not me picking the stuff. Sometimes I do pick the stuff, but that's when okay, so this is how it all works. On the forums, on War Thunder, right? There's a whole section there's a whole section which is dedicated to suggestions to pass to the devs. And there's a moderation team, a mainly volunteer team, which is there to be able to pick, the ones which they specifically want to be passed and also believe represent the community, right? That's the whole idea of it. Now, that's why you see quite a lot of similar ones, which are around the place, and also and also at the same time you see, copied ones, which is quite funny. But at the end of the day, it's not me who's picking these things. It is straight up just, those guys. I cover it because I think it's important to do, not just from a point of view of kind of learning about these things, but also because it's nice seeing new stuff, and, maybe in the future it does come to the game. The past of the devs doesn't mean that the things will come to the game, though. There isn't really a correlation between what is passed and what turns up. It's more just happenstance. There have been things that have been passed to developers that have been added, because, when you pass so many thousands of things, eventually that's going to happen. But yeah, it's not a definite thing, which should be noted, as always. So just remember that when it comes to dealing with those types of situations. The B-36 and the B-32, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who want these large bombers, and I get it, right? Because generally, it can be quite interesting, can be quite a lot of stuff going on. They're huge behemoths, which have a lot of history behind them, especially if you're from America. And the problem with them is pretty simple, though, and it is the fact that they don't really fit in the game. And as we've found with the B-29, the Tu-4, and many others, they don't really go there, which is why Gaijin have focused on strike aircraft instead of bombers at the higher echelons. Can you imagine if they'd added those vehicles in the past? you know, and not today, but in the past, they would have either dominated the game or got annihilated. Nowadays, they'll just get annihilated, and then once in a while, you'll have to deal with a whole map getting carpet bombed in ground. So I think eventually stuff like that gets added, but it gets added in such a crippled form that it just won't ever really be able to do anything. Like, it'll just pretty much get, you know, the bad end of the stick, and it'll just be annihilated. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. My main issue with vehicles like that is balance. It's not whether they can be built or whether it's, you know, the demand for it. I feel like the demand comes from, you know, the whole wanting new stuff constantly, not from actual, like, you know, necessity. But the balance part is a real problem, since only a few nations even bothered making machines like that. So yeah, you're gonna have problems on that end, which we've already seen in the past, and also just fitting them in the current game systems. And there's been a lot of suggestions to try and fit them in. All of them have been pretty poor. A lot of them basically boil down to either fundamentally changing the system of like the game modes to fit all of these different like types of bombers in, or creating its own game mode just so the bombers can do what they want in a PvE kind of setting. So, I mean, they could do it. Is it monetarily worth it? Is it something that they should go for? You know, at the end of the day, who knows? But I think in general, it's something that, you know, at least excites people or keeps people interested in stuff. I wonder which one we get first, you know? Do we continue to get like these kind of strike aircraft that don't really fit in the game very well? Or do we get stuff which still doesn't fit in the game very well, but at least has a different playstyle, you know? Who knows? Anything's kind of possible. So then we have Alex Andrew Odad. Am I really the only one enjoying night battles? At 7-7 with no night vision or thermal, you had a lot of fun. I'm sure there are people who've enjoyed night battles. Whenever I made videos about night battles and how they were really unfair, and also generally, you know, pretty bad for people, there was always individuals coming out that they enjoyed them. The issue is not about whether you enjoy them or not. It's basically about the fact that patterns exist, and with night battles, especially, one of the big things that used to happen was the fact that people would just leave the battles. So you could have it look on teams. They would spawn once, and then if they died, they would just go back. They would just go to hangar, or they just would leave instantly. So even just to start with, you have a very, very rough situation where the teams aren't, you know, the teams aren't balanced, and, you know, nobody really wants to play that. So even though it's an opinion which some people hold, it's unfortunately a minority opinion. And with minority opinions, that basically means that you lose out in games of popularity. And that sucks. You know, it really does. And it would be nice if there was an option for people who want that at lower tiers. Technically, there is already an option at higher tiers for people who want it. So it exists. But as a person who's been playing quite a lot of high tiers, there is straight up one over the past like few weeks I've been playing, like around like 10-0 and even higher, I have had one night battle. One. So yeah, the demand isn't there, you know, which is why they did what they did. Like, if a bunch of people like something and a bunch of people hate something, usually what a team will do is they'll keep that thing in, but they'll try and modify it so, you know, people like it and keep going. And then if they can modify it up to a point where they get more people to like it and it isn't as frustrating, then that's great. Or it just falls apart. What you found with night battles is they fell apart. They had to give people incentives to be able to actually play it, and at the same time, they had to, you know, continually try and push people in a direction to enjoy it, and people just didn't. Good evening, Penguin Red. Nice to see you, Bosun. I see 2 TK. Hopefully you're doing good. Day was good. You know, got a bit of workout in. Got the BR changes covered. And yeah, just kind of chilled for the rest of it. Looking forward to next week. Looking forward to a few things happening. Looking forward to finishing my Manolords playthrough, probably on Monday. Since that'll be... Hopefully we'll have some time in the morning. So then we have Myroslan. I don't think the ASHMs would be such an issue since most of them only had HE warheads. Or an SAP HE. No one in the Cold War had armor, so there was no reason to give you missiles and AP capability. What? Many of these anti-ship missiles have plenty of penetration. The other thing as well that you have to worry about, if you're not worried about penetration on things, the major issue is going to be damage after the fact, right? So, let's just have a look, right? Because one of the things that happens is overpressure, right? But no, I don't actually think that's the case. Alright, so let's see. The warheads of the Harpoon were snagged from the AGM-12D when those earth-to-ground weapons were retired from service. The version of the bullpup used for the Typhoon is about 500 pounds of high explosives. There's no provision for a shaped charge or hardening. So it could probably pen about 4 to 6 inches. It's quite a lot, you know. It's not a tiny amount. The main thing is it'll do damage, and the thing is it'll go into the deck. It won't go, like, you can pick where it goes in, right? But yeah, so it would be a bit of a problem. Just because something doesn't have a crazy amount of AP capability doesn't mean that it won't go through. If you played naval for long enough, you know that HE can do ridiculous amounts of damage to many different things very quickly, and that's what makes it mostly dangerous at the end of the day. You know, if you're in like if you're in something like a cruiser and you're lumping HE at things, it still does a ton of damage, just not internally. It just sets a ton of fires, means that the enemy can't shoot at you, and then also at the same time sets everything on fire, which eventually explodes. Hey Bob, nice to see you. So yeah. The reason why I'm worried about anti-ship missiles is not necessarily also the amount of damage that they can do, right? It's the fact that they can't be countered. That's the big issue. If you're in a World War I battleship, or if you're in a World War II battleship, you cannot stop a missile. You are not designed to stop a missile, so you will just get annihilated, right? And exosets have a 165 kg APHE warhead, so yeah, fun. Hey Teddy, nice to see you. But yeah, so at the end of the day, I feel like with stuff like that, it's the fact that you can't counter it. And pretty much every single thing in the game which has been added that you can't counter causes so many issues, because just like any other game, if there's something that can't be countered and it becomes very easy to use, then everybody uses it, it becomes a problem, and it becomes unfun to use anything else. You can have a look at aviation in that regard, with what people play at specific BRs. You can have a look at ground at the top tier. You can also have a look at helicopters, where you only really see about half of them. Not even half of them. You probably see like 10% of them in most matches. Because of the fact that they're the ones which, you know, people actually play and do well in, where all of the rest of them have unfortunate defects or are dodgy BRs. But yeah, not too fun. For me, as I said, the main issue is being able to counter it. And in the current game, with the way that, you know, battleships are and the way that they're designed, you would not be able to counter a vehicle like that. So, or a countermeasure, or a munition like that. There's no mechanism to be able to deal with it, so it's a bit rough. Let's see. There we go. So we have Deja Vu. I have two theories why people leave after one death. Some of them seem to be worried about their KD ratio. Quite often, when I call out a toxic player, they'll check my stats, calculate my KD, and tell me that my opinion doesn't matter because their KD is slightly higher. These people also seem to be the ones that leave after one death if they're not getting any kills. Why are you contacting these people? Do you want to know the mindset of a Drongoon? As for the second theory, I've noticed that when you get put back on the respawn screen on a big map, it doesn't always render all your teammates on the map, making it look like half your team has already evaporated, so why bother respawning? I think the second reason is much more like set up, right? The people who care about their KD in that set of things, I mean, I don't think, like, playing in another vehicle on top of the one they already play, is that really gonna alter their KD a crazy amount? Like, I mean, maybe. I don't know. But the question would be, why would their KD get hammered if they spawn in again? Why have they come to that conclusion after playing the game? So, looking at the KD stuff is not really, you know, a good thing to look at. What should be looked at is why they think that. So, it's chicken or the egg thing. Now, the reason why they think that is because it's true. Basically, if your team is losing, especially at high tier, and you can see the enemy is breaking through certain areas, you're just gonna die. There's nothing you can do, and spawning in is worthless. You know, you're basically just feeding somebody your time because the other team has already won. Right? Because they're already in power positions. They're already hammering things. There is not really much point in doing what you want to do. Like for me, when I was playing stuff like the CV9030, for example, there was a lot of matches where I would play it, and then I would die, like after like 5 minutes or, 10 minutes or something like that, and I would realize that the reason why I've died is because they've just straight up punched through the center of the map. And if I spawn again, there's just going to be a bunch of guys just staring at the spawn because they've punched through it, right? So, is there, in that scenario, a reason for me to spawn back in? And the answer is no. There is no reason for me to spawn back in because I'll just feed somebody a kill, therefore just increasing the snowball. There's nothing I can do in that scenario to come back, right? So, yeah, what I would say is I would give War Thunder players a bit more credit in why they do things. Some people will do it out of frustration, Some people will do stuff like that because of the fact that they feel annoyed at what goes on, or maybe they're just grinding a specific vehicle. Like, I know a lot of people who only bring one vehicle to a battle. There's a lot of content creators that do it, so therefore they can get content for that specific vehicle. And then there's also a lot of people who do it because they're only grinding that one vehicle, right? They don't care about anything else. Those guys, like, that's how they see it, And that's nothing to do with, like, performance or anything like that. That's just trying to go for a goal. But arguing with people who, like, bring up stats or, like, do anything like that, there's not really much point. It's better just to move on, no matter who it is. Like, stats tell you a decent amount, but at the same time, like, if I just sat here all day and played the Panzer II-C over and over again, I'd have like a 10 or 20 KD. It's not really much point, you know. What do you think about adding the Vulcan, the Valiant, or the Victor, as they would be a little worse F-111 counterpart for GB? They're not comparable to the F-111. But yeah, I'd be fine with adding them. But yeah, they're not comparable. They're made for very different things. But yeah, so for me, it's always been pretty obvious why people only spawn once, right? Yeah, there might be frustration. The economical argument was always silly. It made no sense, especially the last 3 or 4 years. But the major reason is, you know, because of how rapid a lot of the games are, especially at high echelons, when somebody breaks through or when somebody is able to get an advantage, it's very, very tough to get it back, especially in the current landscape. Then we have TK. Let's see. Hey, your local meme, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. Yeah, that's the other thing, Bob, as well. That thing is at least a lot less nowadays, but yeah, there's straight up just vehicles which don't have lineups too, especially from minor nations. I remember when I played the Type 87 RCVP, every vehicle I had in the lineup was a lower BR, because it just didn't have anything at its BR. So in that setup, like, what, I spawn a worse vehicle half the time, also in a negative place? Like, you're gonna have to fulfill a decent amount of criteria there for me to actually want to do that, right? And, yeah, that criteria is hard to meet quite a lot of the time. So yeah, it's a tough one. At least a lot of the time in this setup, so it's just how it goes, you know? Yeah, we're gonna play Mana Lords again, but we're gonna do it on Monday. I'm gonna finish off the campaign that we did on Monday. It was pretty fun. I had a very good time with it. It was nice. Hello, Tech. Hopefully you're doing well. Yeah, doing alright. Still struggling a bit with the viral infection, but it'll get better. I have a question about the ATGM carriers, because currently I'm spading the Type 60 ATM. And the way I'm spading it is just going around and scouting people, since most of the maps are CQ. So my question is, are they worth grinding out or simply skipping? If you have the opportunity to, I would just skip vehicles like that. You know, like, you're not gonna learn anything from it. It's not like there's some, like, hidden source that you're gonna get from it. There's no vehicles that really act like it, for example. So, yeah, it's... you get a great feeling of, like, completing it, which is super useful, especially in War Thunder, you know? Chasing that, okay, I did this and, like, hardly anybody else did it, it's kind of a cool thing. But at the same time, like, if your time is not as, if you don't have as much time to play stuff, it'd be much better playing something which is, you know, in a much better position. Like, for me, because the way that I approach the game, I really like spading vehicles, right? I think it's pretty fun. I have a good time with it. But for a lot of others, that isn't something that that is like the primary thing, you know? So, depending on how, you know, you look at the game, or depending on what you focus on, will matter, you know, what you end up fighting with or against in that way. So it kind of depends on how you feel, you know, and what you focus on. If you focus on spading, yeah, it's a good feather in the cap, you know? I think overall it's one of those things that can give you a lot of peace of mind and benefit. But as a person who grinded it out when it didn't even have scouting, would I recommend, like, finishing something like that? No. No, there's a lot better things in the world to do. You know. There's a lot nicer things to have a bit of fun with. Especially in the Japanese tree nowadays, there's a lot more stuff. So, just give that a go and have a bit of fun. So we have Life on the X. I take low-tier tanks into high BRs to challenge yourself. Like fulfilling, knocking out a 7377 or 80 in a 2-3 vehicle and getting the God Mode medal along with the 30 KSL. I mean, fair enough. I've never really understood it myself, but I do know people do it. Oh my god. Whoa. Why there's just a cloud around there? Usually, like, you know, 80-90% of the time it won't work out, but I get people are chasing that like 1%. For me, I've never really enjoyed it. I think in general, it's one of those things which can put people... Dude, I just can't see this guy at all. It can put people in a pretty weird place. But yeah, I would actually personally prefer it if there were certain things which were actually locked. So, for example, okay. What? I would actually prefer it if certain things were just blocked, you know? Like, and basically it was something where you couldn't actually spawn in those vehicles, apart from at their specific BRs, or, you know, with a variance thing. Hey, Garlic Bread, nice to see you. Just because I think it's generally negative, not for the individual who's doing it, because they obviously get enjoyment out of it, but it's just negative for everybody else. It's very similar to like when the Type 93 came out, and in my matches I'd have like 2 or 3 or 4 Type 93s on my team, and we would just lose because they can't do anything. You know, they have one specific purpose. If the enemy doesn't bring something to deal with that specific purpose, it just sits there and doesn't do a lot. This was before it had scouting too, so it was straight up just a missile launcher and that was it. Not too fun. So we have Trey Klim. Hey again. Sorry about not being specific enough. I mainly meant how Italian top-tier ground isn't the best compared to its competitors. On a more interesting topic, thoughts on the ridiculous helicopter research point requirements and the absolutely absurd helicopter module grind? Yeah, they're quite expensive. They're pretty pricey, but it's also because there's hardly any of them, and also, you know, they're supposed to be higher echelon vehicles, so you're supposed to already have, you know, got to that point to grind them out. The major thing I think they should do with helicopters is add in a system super similar to parts and FPE for higher tier vehicles. So certain modifications are a lot cheaper than others because they're seen as more standard. One of the things they have done more recently, hey Papa Stalin, nice to see you, is they have actually made it so these helicopters get a lot better stock kind of munitions compared to what they did previously, since their stock munitions used to be absolutely trash. They're still not great, but they're better than they were before. So at least they've realized there's a problem. Now that more people are playing them, and more people are going through them. Will that change that much? I mean, probably not. But, you know, you gotta try. At the end of the day. You gotta give it a go. I'm personally hoping that maybe, as I said, like with ground vehicles, I'd like it so they give you kind of like a button, or when you unlock a vehicle, you can pick specific mods that you want to be a bit cheaper than the others. So you're not just limited to parts and FPE, and you're just limited to other stuff. What skin is this? I got no idea. It was just sat on my vehicle. So yeah, that at least in general would be something that I would look at. I think in general, helicopters are a bit pricey to grind. I don't think they're that enjoyable to grind, and one of the things that's working massively against them is the fact that they don't last very long in ground forces. And since a lot of kind of grinding of these types of vehicles are done over time nowadays, so not necessarily just over, like, you know, little periods, it has led to a lot of issues where you would have problems where, what's the word I'm looking for? It's led to a lot of issues where it takes you ages to grind out these things because, you know, the modular grind is so slow. So maybe they could increase the amount of RP you get in helicopters and ground. Maybe they could increase it in PvE. Maybe they could add more modifications. So the modifications actually, you know, are cheaper, even if the modifications don't really do a lot. Because that's another thing too. As someone who's spaded a lot of vehicles, especially in the British aviation tree, one of the things that became very obvious very quickly is there is a metric ton of vehicles. Like, you can have a look at like the Sea Venom or the Venom for this, where they do not have a lot of modifications. And because they don't have a lot of modifications, pretty much, like, their overall cost is really expensive. The cost of the individual mod depends on how many modifications you have, how many are at each rank, and also the total amount of research for the vehicle. So since the helicopters usually have a lot less mods than other things, especially the mid-tier ones, it basically means that you are in a position where you kind of get screwed, and it sucks. Like, it's not very fun. It would be much nicer if a lot of those modifications were cheaper, and maybe the way you do that is you add more modifications, so it's easier to grind through. So then we have Mr. Snack. How's the J7E and J8 for China? I haven't really played the J8 a lot. I played it a bit, but I played the J7. J7's really fun. Decent flight model. Not great gun, but it has the PL5Bs. PL5Bs overall have a really nice time. And I have a great time with them. I think they're ones which a lot of people could, you know, enjoy and have a good time with. But yeah, it's one of those which I think I would say is probably not as good as it used to be. I need to go back and actually play the J7. I never actually finished it. So when I do that, I'll give a more open thoughts about it. But they added a lot of vehicles with a lot of crazy missiles of those BRs. And since it's limited to rear aspect IRs, even though those rear aspect IRs are really good, it might obviously negatively affect the vehicle. Not sure about the J8 though. We'll see when the next kind of aircraft event comes around. Hey Most West, nice to see you. Hopefully you're doing good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Then we have Last Red Start. When do you think the Taiwanese M1A2T Abrams tanks will be added? I recently finished my top tier tank grind for China and was wondering when the Abrams will arrive. I guess it will come in a year or two. Don't think Taiwan has their Abrams yet, do they? Isn't it just ordered? Or did they actually receive some? Like, I don't know. I don't know how that works. Like, obviously they can add it whenever they want. I feel like once they run out of, you know, actual indigenous Chinese MBTs at high tier, they'll start adding more stuff in. But when I think about, you know, the idea of trying to make it more interesting, like trying to make each nation a little bit more, the variety of it. One of the ways I don't really want to do that is for every nation just to have the same vehicles, right? So when you have a look at the Hungarian stuff, for example, they added to Italy, they basically added a ton of German and Soviet vehicles, right? Like, let's be honest. And when you think about like the hype factor of that, compared to them adding Sweden, or compared to them adding another nation, it's a lot less because it's basically the same stuff. It was needed, it was required, but, you know, it didn't really make any splash or anything like that. It was just something that kind of existed. So, will the M1A2T come? Yeah, I'm sure it will. There's no reason why it wouldn't. But will it be a priority? Probably not, since, you know, China still has a ton of kind of indigenous stuff that they can add. So I think in general, I would probably expect it whenever they run out of Chinese stuff to add, or Chinese modifications of stuff to add. So maybe 3-4 years, depending on how they want to release stuff. I'm not really worried about things like that. Like, you know, stuff like that comes with time, and since it comes with time, you know, eventually it's going to turn up. It's just waiting to see when, and hopefully we can get a few more pieces of uniqueness instead of just the same things over and over again. We already have had a rapid expansion of America in a lot of tech trees, especially with good old Israel coming in. Don't really think it's needed in other places, but who knows? Life is a mysterious place. So we have Away With You, Valbega. Hello, Tech, and hope you're feeling better. We're getting there, slowly but surely. I still have a tickle in the throat, but pretty much everything else is cleaned up. So I would, it feels like there's like a hair in my throat basically all the time now. So it's not really very good. And I'm sure like talking for several hours a day is probably not helping it, but c'est la vie. It isn't hurting, it's just an annoying little thing. So hopefully, you know, by next week it'll be sorted. Hopefully we won't have to worry about it too much. Then we could get back to normal proceedings. A quick question this week, since I started playing Realistic again and I'm atrocious at CAS. You have a reliable trick for a successful CAS run? I don't have much trouble in the fighter role, but when it comes to CAS runs, I'm 50-50. Anyways, thanks in advance and have a good one. 50-50 is pretty good, if that's the case. The major issue with the CAS run is in Air Realistic, is you have a few ways of approaching it. Number one is you go in first and try and get as much as you can and then get out. This can work with a variety of different vehicles. Strike aircraft are pretty good at, you know, doing things like that. So, you know, you can do it with them. Bombers, not so much. They usually get hammered. But because more and more things get air spawns nowadays, it's a little bit harder to do. So, on certain maps, you can definitely get away with it. Usually the maps which are like lines. So lines of fortifications on each side. You can start on one end and then work down and then go back to the airfield. But on quite a few maps, like Hokkaido, for example, that's not going to work. Because they're going to get to you before you end up, you know, kind of getting to them. So for me, it's map dependent and not really based around like who you face. Because, you know, usually everybody has stuff in the air. If you're not really sure about it and, you know, you're not able to get stuff in, wait for the initial fighter engagement. So if you wait for that, and then if you support your own friendly fighters and you win that battle, then you can go on ground pound afterwards. Now, a lot of vehicles are not very good at that, but it can be done. Sorry. It can be done, and it can work very well. But yeah, it's not the easiest thing for, you know, people to do. So for me, that's what I would focus on. If you're not getting enough runs in that you think that you should be, then you have to focus on trying to get those runs in and trying to do that by a superiority. Once you do that, you'll be fine. You'll be able to set it all up. So it's much easier to do. Anyways, thanks in advance and have a good one. Will do. So then we have Saiyan Wannabe. 1314. Why wouldn't they just use reserves? If they're going to J out, reserves can't be crew locked. Oh, yeah, so the reason why, okay, so the reason why they spawn in rank 2s and 3s instead of reserves is because the reserves don't use up, it's not that they can't be crew locked, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent crew locking on their other vehicles, so not specifically the reserves. So if you spawn in a bunch of reserves and then leave, you'll still have points, like SP points, to be able to spawn in your big bangers, so therefore they'll get crew locked. So the whole point of spawning in rank 2s and 3s is they use SP, more SP I should say, and that means that you don't have any SP to spawn in. So therefore your mega tanks that you want to play don't get crew locked, and your other tanks that you've been playing also don't get crew locked. That's why they do it. It's not specifically to stop crew locking of, you know, the vehicles you're going to spawn in, because they won't get crew locked because you spawned in them. It's to stop the vehicles that are going to be crew locked because you didn't spawn in them. So it's a way of bleeding SP. That's basically, you know, why they're doing it. It's not really any other reason. So yeah, like that's why you see it at high tiers a lot. It's just people bleeding their SP cost, and since they got rid of the whole like repair thing with premium account users, you don't have to worry about that either. So yeah, it's quite an easy life to be able to game the system and not play matches that you don't want to play. Yeah, don't be surprised when people end up abusing systems. Happens all the time. Luckily, I don't see it too much. It happens very, very rarely nowadays. Used to happen a lot more with reserves, where people would just like hold W and go in. But now these guys literally spawn in and J out and then leave. So, slightly different on how they're doing stuff. Like, it sucks that they do it. And once again, it should be something that's punished. I don't know how you would punish it. But yeah, it should be something that's at least looked at. Alright, then we have House of Schmidt. Over the age, Guardian seems to push game modes to favor very short matches, which has resulted in the majority of match outcomes ending in a complete team wipe. To me, this makes War Thunder play more like a mobile game, and it's getting really stale. The game modes feel tailored to shuffling me in and out of matches as fast as possible. Outside of Sim, do you ever see Guardian adding more long-form matches? They could make the matches a hell of a lot more quicker if they wanted to. The way that War Thunder is set up right now, like 25-minute matches, is designed around the fact that most people don't have a lot of time in a day to play. So, when they started up making War Thunder, one of the things they talked about was the fact that people only had maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day to play, right? So they focused on trying to hit that. So matches which were 30 minutes to an hour. That's why arcade still is the most popular set of game modes out of pretty much everything. Because fast, quick, intense matches which don't last very long, so people can get into the action quickly and people can move around quickly, right? Like, that's the idea. So the idea is maybe to quicken stuff up, I don't know. But I don't think they've fundamentally changed how let's say, ground works, apart from moving around a few SB costs. The way air works, I mean, it's basically the same as it was before, apart from you have more opportunities to end the games early through tickets. And then, I mean, naval is the same as it was before too. The big difference that's changed, especially if you go up the tiers, is mentality of people and also speed. Back in the day, vehicles were a lot slower at the high tiers. Think about when like the M60 was top dog or the Tiger II was top dog. And those vehicles are what, like half the speed, if not more than half the speed of the top tier vehicles now. So basically people are getting into engagements quicker, and they're getting into fights quicker, and they're getting to power positions quicker. Same in air as well. Even though they've made the maps bigger, it's still the same thing. Previously you didn't have Mach 2 capable vehicles, right? They just didn't exist. Now you do. And now you have missiles, which also fly around at incredibly crazy rates too. So basically, yeah, that's the difference. It's the vehicles themselves, not really the game modes or anything like that. The game modes haven't changed, the vehicles have. And if you play lower tier stuff, you'll find that the matches are basically the same speed compared to previously. There's not really much of a difference between what it used to be like and what it is now. Like, this BR is pretty much the same, apart from some wheeled vehicles that are a little bit crazy. But yeah, as you go higher, the matches are faster, and there's a lot more going on. So, shouldn't really be too much of a surprise. They can't really fix this because of how everything is set up. Because the only way to fix this is to expand maps. And by doing that, you just artificially increasing something without really a benefit. So people aren't going to react well to something like that. They're going to go, well, why are you doing that, you know? What's the point in that? And usually those conversations don't go very well. Then we have Rafa Has. Hello TEC, hope you're well. Getting there. Apologies for complaining, but I'm frustrated. That's okay. Recently I was playing top tier. It's so broken. I was killed by a heli, then again by a heli, then third and fourth time by a heli. Yeah, that'll happen. When I took the AA, K58 2 VT1s and killed me. He didn't even crash after this. And yet there are new SU-25s with missiles that outrange every AA in the game. Usually, I have more air kills in ground RB than ground kills. Also, why there are nations like Israel or Italy that don't have any top tier AA? Is there really nothing to add to those tech trees? I have almost all the top tier tanks and AAs in the game, and I'd like to use them all. But without lineups, it's just unfair. Gaijin had the Panzer because the 206 was underperforming. What are our nations without AA? Are their stats good enough? Yeah. It's a fair point, and it's one that I've brought up many times. There has been an unfortunate disparity with, what do you call them, support vehicles, depending on the nations. Some nations get a lot of support vehicles and a lot of mechanics, other nations don't. So yeah, it sucks. There is this constant battle between CAS and AA in War Thunder. And unfortunately, CAS has been winning for about 4 years now. So yeah, it feels awful. It's really, really bad. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable to get killed by stuff you can't see. But they just kept adding more and more stuff for some reason. We're going to be playing the Leopard 2A7 over this weekend and next week, just to kind of see where it's at. And also see what the matches look like. I'm not hugely looking forward to it from terms of CAS. I am looking forward to it from a ground point of view. But the question will always be, will I be allowed to actually play from the ground point of view? After playing a lot of 10-3, I actually counted the amount of times I died to CAS, compared to died to tanks. The actual ratio was ridiculous. It was, I need to have a look at it again, but it was either 3.5 to 1 or 4 to 1 in terms of CAS killing me compared to ground vehicles. Now, that also does depend on playstyle, since, you know, I definitely don't, like, I'm not as aggressive in a lot of vehicles a lot of the time compared to other players. So usually, you know, I find positions, I hold them, and then, you know, I kill everybody around me, then I push forward, and usually in that push forward stage, I get donked by some kind of machine, which is annoying. But yeah, that's usually what happens, which isn't very fun. So yeah, CAS is out of control, has been for a long time, and they just keep adding to it. Even with the way that the BRs work, they would have to completely change how it all works. They have very simple solutions to this. Through SP costs, they could easily do this. But yeah, for some reason, that's not the case. Luckily, later in the year, they are at least changing helicopter flight models too. So hopefully that will bring in a new age where we can actually deal with helicopters instead of hitting them a bunch of times and it doing a bunch of crits and not actually doing anything. Hopefully that happens. But yeah, we'll have to see, won't we? Later on. The major issue for me about CAS is, you know, obviously the higher echelons it's annoying, especially if you're dealing with somebody with a very high resolution monitor. With also a very high response time, so you can see people from absolutely miles away. But the major issues are actually the tiers which are slightly below it. So, for example, something like an A7 in a full down tier can't be dealt with. Something like a A4 in a full down tier, you literally can't deal with them at all. There is no way to actually be able to do that vehicle. You can't kill them. Like and especially since they just added that third-person lock system as well to certain vehicles. You don't even have to go into the optical sight to do it anymore. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. But c'est la vie. That's the problem with constantly having to expand stuff, right? You know. In War Thunder, everything is always 6 months behind where it needs to be in terms of balance. It was a fantastic interview that Sercon did, who used to play War Thunder and now does used to play World of Tanks, now does War Thunder. And he talked to the creative director of Wargaming. I'm pretty sure it was the guy who got done for celebrating the the war in Ukraine. But yeah, so he did the interview, and one of the things he talked about is it takes about 6 months for a vehicle to be added for it to be fully balanced into the game, right? So from added to sorted, it takes that long. Now that's all well and good, but what happens when you have 2 or 3 or 4 or mainly 3 major updates in 6 months? So that just constantly shifts everything all the time. How do you even deal with that? Because you can never actually let something sit and become balanced for that period of time. Because the data and everything is just always moving around. And that's what top tier is, you know. And that's why it is just can be a bit of a hellscape sometimes. We'll have to see what goes on. Hopefully more parity happens. Hopefully more stuff goes around with that. But I feel like at top tier, it's always going to be inherently unbalanced. It's just how it goes. So we have Maxwell. Hey Tech, did you watch WrestleMania XL? No, I haven't watched wrestling in maybe like 15 years. I think it's fun. Like, I like wrestling, actually. I think it's cool. It's just time, as usual. I want to say a few things. I downloaded the full game client yesterday, and it actually runs better now at fixed 50 gigs than it did with the minimal client. Who would have thought that not cutting the game in half will make it run better? That's kind of weird. Wonder why that's the case. But at least that's good, you know? It's good to hear. That it runs better for you. I also want to note that lately I've been trying to spade the Churchill 7 and the Avenger. The AP has been spalling very well. Did they make a change recently? I don't think so. I don't think anything changed. I might be wrong. Last thing, yesterday I went to War Thunder Live and found a very old M26 skin I used to adore. To my surprise, it was an anime skin and I never knew. I think it'd be interesting to make a video where you go over live War Thunder skins of a vehicle or something. Though this is a project, seems to be time consuming, if not on stream or something. Whatever you like, just an idea. You mean like my top skins of a vehicle from War Thunder Live? I mean, I could do. The problem is I don't even have time to do the camo chest videos. There's like 3 or 4 camo chest videos I have to do. They take a long time. That's the problem, as talked about. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort to go through it. And also at the same time, like, it's getting to a point now where the economy of all that stuff is quite a large part of the game. And as somebody who has been around the CS2/CSGO/whatever Counter-Strike thing for a while, I'm always worried about the fact that people use it as kind of a pseudo way of investing and gambling. And War Thunder has very much taken like a piece out of that book. And if I'm honest with you, I'm not really hugely into that. I think it's quite negative to focus on those things. So I try and limit the stuff that I do there at the end of the day. Then we have Laggy Soup Dealer. Hello, Tech. I like potatoes. Do you like potatoes? Yeah, potatoes are good. You can have them in a bunch of different ways. Good stable carbohydrate. You know, they work well. I'll be mad. There isn't really anything negative to say about potatoes. They work well. You know, they go through the system. They have a good time. Stable food. Pretty much everybody for the last however many years. Can't be mad. Not revolutionary, but a good place for imagination. And you can even make an alarm clock out of them. How fun. Then we have Jetfire Quasar. In regards to the rant about Japanese and German military heroes and the lack of them because of what happened during the war. Not just that, but also the ideology that drove them. Going by that standard, no nation should have military heroes in the game because the Soviets and the Allies did inhumane and atrocious things during the time as well. Obviously not as insane, but you had concentration camps of the US for the Japanese civilians, POWs murdered in cold blood, massive amounts of rape and dehumanizing of civilians on the Soviet side as well. Neither side is clean, there's no good guys in war, only those who break morality in various degrees. I mean, look, man. As I said in the video previously, the last week, like, the orders of magnitude is very important in life. And as somebody who is well aware of the fact that there were internment camps in Canada and also America of Japanese, not even just Japanese civilians, just people who were of Japanese descent, right? Because that was a large thing in Canada. Like the area where I am, right? So the area where I am, they basically told everybody who was either Japanese or of Japanese descent to march 200 miles inland. So therefore, they couldn't coordinate with anybody from Japan to be able to invade by sea. And their homes were taken away, Their businesses were taken away. Whole communities were just uprooted. And even after the war, they weren't given them back, a lot of them. And instead, they were actually told, oh, well, why don't you just go back to Japan? And some of these people were like third-generation Japanese people. They had no connection to Japan at all. And they were Canadians. And yeah, that sucks, right? It's awful. It's not gas chambers, though. It's not systematic destruction of a people. Right? It's not following an ideology that is based around the hatred of killing everybody else and believing you're superior. Right? These are two very different things. I really don't like this whole comparison thing. It's a very poor idea. Right? There were war crimes that were actually committed by US soldiers. There was one in Italy. He actually got absconded from it, shooting surrendered soldiers. I think he shot 2 of them. And he actually got an official pardon from the US president, right? We also won't get him as a Pages of History person either, right? But the issue is the whole thing is tainted, right? Because of the ideologies at the time. I would highly recommend anybody just going in and reading about the ideological setup of those two things. You will find it horrific, and you will find it horrible to follow, okay? It's not fun, and it's not good. Alright? But this comparison of nobody is good, everybody is bad, so therefore we should let everybody in, it's not gonna fly. Because first of all, it's not the vast majority of opinion of these things, right? And second of all, it's not true. So, yeah. If there was, like, these mass amounts of camps where people were put, right? And then systematically murdered, then you would have a point. But that didn't happen. Right? So, yeah. This idea of comparisons is very bad. You can look at any part of history and do that, which is why it's lazy and boring. Hitler liked dogs, he didn't like smoking, he's a pretty cool dude, right? Same idea. Waste of time. You have to look at the overall arching message, and you have to also look at, you know, the actual orders of magnitude of these things. It's like comparing, I don't know, like... It's like comparing Leclerc to Mao. And, you know, how people like... and how many people they either sent to their deaths or through policy ordered or ended up dying. And just saying they're the same because some people died under both. It's two very different ideologies, two very different setups, and two very, very different, you know, problems. So yeah. And once again, the individual stuff. You're not gonna get people who... You're not gonna get the dude who, like, designed the internment camps as a page of history guy, right? That's just how it goes. So yeah. It's a very poor argument, this idea of magnitude. Like, there's no need. It happens all the time. And it's just there to dismiss people doing heinous stuff. So we have Gulak Kulak. Since a lot of people seem to be chasing the current meta and using whatever vehicle happens to be the most OP at the moment, I propose a new unofficial slogan for War Thunder: become the cancer you hate. To be honest, that's every game, though. You know, every game that has a multiplayer element, you have that percentage of people who just chase whatever is the fun thing, or what they see as fun because they do well in it, right? Like, I don't know, it's just how it goes. Like, there's always going to be that set, and it's just how it goes. I don't know. Then we have Sadiswan. You got sinusitis. Well, itis is just inflammation, and sinus is this part of the nose, right? It's in my throat, so it's not that. I don't know what it is, but, like, it's getting better. So, that's the main thing. At this moment in time, I have my taste back, which is good. My nose is mostly back to normal, with a few hypersensitive moments. My ear is a lot better. And now it's just my throat, so... We're nearly done. We're nearly getting there. Usually the period of time for these things to, like, be bad or be good is usually about a week. And we're about a week and a bit. And since I haven't really given myself any rest, I'd say that's pretty good. We're doing okay. But it's not sinusitis. Really don't like itises as well. I think they're kind of boring. Because as I said, itis just means inflammation. So it's like, it's just a way of, you know, it's just a way of, like saying something is blown up. Good old medical terms. They're quite fun. So then we have Legend. I don't know who you got your info from for the subs, because during the Battle of the Atlantic event, I had zero trouble playing the subs at any stage of the event. The info was from me, because I played it and watched it, and, you know, was part of it. The submarines were awful compared to the American machines that were on offer, to a point where a lot of the American frigates would overrun these spawns. And since unless you went to the furthest depth and were completely quiet, meaning that you didn't move, they could hear you, so they could kill you. The other thing that was also fun is, as a backup, right? As a backup, the Catalina was given, what, 500 pound bombs? And even if the submarines were at the lowest depth, if you put on a, I think it was a 2-second delay, you could easily kill them. So, like, as I said, it took 3 or 4 matches each time to be able to get the score. And then for the ships, because it was very hard to actually get to where you needed to go. And then for the other portion, for the air portion or whatever, oh sorry, for the frigate portion, you could do it in a game because you could just overrun them. Like the fact that you could see them from the air, the fact that they were spotted on the map from the air, the fact that, as I said, you could just run into them, and yeah, they put the vehicles in a very negative position by making the torps pretty much useless. And I played all of that event, you know, from start to finish, and the meta didn't change. They didn't even move anything around. Like, they didn't even try and balance it. So yeah, it was very, very easy to play from one side and not from the other. I even made a video about it, you know, talking about my experiences and wondering why they did it like that. I was very confused. I don't know why they decided to artificially nerf the submarines. I think it might have been something to do with them worrying that the submarines would just spawn and fire the torps at the setup. But yeah, basically meant that they weren't very fun to play. You basically put the counter of the machine up against it, and then went, okay, have fun. And it didn't go very well. So, I don't know. I don't know anybody who thinks that event was balanced or even in favor of the submarines. That would be a crazy notion. So yeah. And we have Driver. Hello. Do you think World War I vehicles will ever be in the game in like a different game mode? And when, if ever, they'll run out of stuff to add and start putting things from the future in? Will it ever be in the game for real, or is it a bridge too far? We have stuff in the game that's already projected for the future and not in service. The Leo 2PL, when it was added, wasn't in Polish service. The 2S38 is probably the best example of a vehicle that I'm pretty sure is not in service right now. It's going to be in service in the future. The TAM-2C also was one of those which, when put into the game, was not in service and still is technically in service, but in a very, very limited capacity. We also already have World War I stuff. We have naval World War I battleships and even cruisers and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they will continue to add more World War I stuff. I think there's a chance they can add aviation as a World War I thing. I think ground is pretty much impossible to add, since it's very limited to specific nations, and also just would be incredibly boring. When it comes to World War I ground stuff, I've said I would like them to do an event of the first tank battle, which was one of the Marks, maybe the Mark IV versus the German vehicle. I think it would be really cool if they decided to do an event around it, and if you play the event, and if you play both sides and play a certain amount of matches or get a certain amount of kills, maybe you can keep them as hangar decorations or things that you can spawn in custom battles. But I don't think they work in the actual game. I think they're pretty limited in terms of what they can do, and that obviously is a quite large negative for them going forward. Planes can work though, just in a very limited capacity, and probably in... If there's plenty of maps at low tier arcade which are incredibly small and pretty much designed for that type of thing, so they could definitely just set that up. I think that could work pretty well. I think they could do that. Not a bridge too far there. Then we have Gabriel Ravelou. Hello, TEC. First of all, thank you for answering my question so in depth last time. Oh, it's okay. By the way, the difference between the F-14D and the A and B is that it gets a new HUD, new APG-71 radar, and has access to infrared search and track. Oh, fair enough. Well, yeah, that could definitely get added then. What do you think about 5th generation fighters in War Thunder? Would they even be added at any point? Yeah. Anything will get added, even future stuff eventually for aviation. Aviation is just a little bit behind the other modes, basically because of the fact that, you know, that's the part of military that has massively ramped up the last, 50 years or so. So, yeah, stuff like that's getting added. I don't really like the generation thing, though. Like, we've talked about this in the past. Generation of fighter is just whoever you decide to ask at the time. Like, most people use the American definition of it, which, is fine, but there's so many, like, the Chinese Communist Party, or the PLA, I should say, like, the People's Liberation Army, they just have a complete different, like, description of what generations of fighters are. So, yeah, it's a bit weird. Bit different at the end of the day. So, yeah, most people use the American one, but just understand that there's a lot of other ones around the place too. What's my favorite top tier plane in War Thunder? The F-16. Pretty simple. I think the F-16 is one of those which has been, kind of iconic in every sense of the word over the previous years. So generally, I think it has, a pretty cool setup. I think if I played a bit more of stuff like the Su-27, I'd probably enjoy it. But I don't know how that would go. Would have to see. I'm going to be playing a lot more top tier stuff now. As I said, we're going to be spading the Leo 2A7, which should be quite fun. Today and tomorrow and the next day. And yeah, we'll kind of see what goes on with that stuff. So yeah. And lastly, do I prefer brunette or blonde? Don't say ginger for the love of God. What's wrong with gingers? Ginger, ginger, gingerbread man. Great show, that one. Hey Queens, nice to see you. Don't really have a preference. I'd probably go for brunette, but I mean it really doesn't matter. The main issue is skin complexion. So it's very obvious when a blonde has dyed her hair to like a darker color, and it's even more obvious when a brunette has dyed their hair to like a blonde color. So I would actually more just say kind of like natural colors, right? Like I don't like people who constantly dye their hair all the time, or at the same time like go for colors which are very like contrasted to their skin. I think it just looks really weird. So yeah, that's probably what I would generally say. But I mean, I think I've been all around the color palette. I don't think there's a person. I don't think there's a hair color that I haven't been with. Usually it depends on more about the brain that's attached to the hair color than the than the hair color itself, you know. So we have Burkhardt based responses. Oh, I don't know what that is, but fair enough. We're based. Then we have Gopnik. Hello Tech, how are you? Okay, doing alright. Just waiting to recover from this viral infection. I have one small question to ask. With the past of the developers, have you ever thought about giving the people who made them credit, even just saying who made them? Whilst I cannot say for certain, it is quite clear that some suggestions take a lot of effort to make. It might also help by encouraging more people to make suggestions for the vehicles they love. I always see people misunderstanding and thinking you control the past of devs in the comments section. Even just mentioning the creator's name could help alleviate that. I used to do that. I used to actually say people's names of the posts, and there was a few of the creators who asked me to stop doing that. And the reason why is because people would disagree with the posts, or people would find or believe to find something that was wrong with the post, and then they would go after them. Now, for me, you know, I've been here for quite a long time, and I'm very much, like, dull to stuff like that. Like, people just basically going after things, especially if it's something that they're just completely wrong about. But there are people, especially people who, you know, make posts or just want to, like, chat about vehicles and have a bit of fun, who don't want to kind of be messaged or talked to about these things. They just kind of want to be left alone and want to do it as kind of a hobby. They're not interested in the discussion part. So, since there was a few of them who asked me to basically stop, you know, mentioning their name, I thought, well, it's only really fair if I don't mention any of them, right? Because then it would be very obvious who was being targeted, or, you know, who was the people who didn't want their names mentioned. Because, you know, their names wouldn't be mentioned and everybody else's would, right? So that's basically why I don't mention the names anymore. It's basically by request. I actually think it's really good to be able to mention people's names, especially if they put a lot of effort into things. And I think in general, I try my best to do that stuff. I do leave a link in the description to the pasta developers, whichever ones it is. But yeah, it's more of just the fact that in the past it has caused issues, and that I just want to make sure that people don't get gone after for making things online. You know, I think it's a lot better if they feel safe doing those things, and it's a lot better if it's a lot better if, you know, people can just enjoy the content instead of going after the authors of it. But as we've seen with War Thunder and many different instances, and pretty much every online community, there's going to be a certain percentage of people who are wackos, and you do have to account for the wackos, and it sucks. And for me, as I said, it don't really bother me because I've dealt with it for many years, but many of the guys don't, and it's the first time they deal with it, and yeah, it's kind of not good for them. The amount of times I've seen like the Barbara Streisand effect in War Thunder, where there's just been like one person who said something mean, and then what ends up happening is like somebody responds to it, and then everybody goes after the response, instead of, the fact that somebody's just being an asshole to somebody else. I'd have like, a lot of money from that. Like, it's crazy when it happens, So, yeah, I leave the links in the description so people can see them. I know that there's going to be a confusion about this, but also at the same time, even when I used to say the names and stuff like that, there was still confusion because people thought that I picked the posts that these people had made, so therefore it was my past developers. So yeah, so it didn't really help the situation. It basically just made it the same. Just a disclaimer, this is not meant to be an attack on you. Many other creators do the same as you, and if it was a major problem, I'm sure would be more vocal about it. Just I imagine it must be quite bittersweet to the suggestion makers watching their hard work unnoticed, especially since all you're doing is reading their work and not giving them credit. Well, I just explained why. The same people that you are projecting onto about their thoughts and what they want to see have told me that they don't want that done. So, it's... I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do in that setup. I do apologize for this little rant. I just know how it feels for people to not give you credit or something you worked hard on. I can only imagine what it must feel like for the people whose suggestions are regularly passed to the devs, watching their work go unnoticed or even being misrepresented as your own. As I know it's not your intention. The only people who are misrepresenting it are my own are the people who don't look in the descriptions of the videos, and also don't understand what past the developers is. I can't save the world from this idea. I've been doing the past the developers for about 5 years, and many times I've said how it works and how it's set up, but as said, every time there's new people come along, they may think different things or work in different ways. There's not a lot I can do about that. I could put a disclaimer at the start of every video, here's a great example. So one of the things I used to do in my videos, and I think it's important to do, is to let people know I'm part of the partnership program, right, in War Thunder. Because a lot of people get a very crude understanding of, how the partnership program works. Whether it's with, like, the partner discount stuff, or whether it's with, being able to request things, right? And this can lead to a lot of, like, situations where when, you interact with content, it's very different from the way that you're going to see it, right? So what I used to do is, in front of every single one of my videos, I put a little, like, disclaimer basically saying, hey, I'm part of the partnership program, and, this is what this is, and this is how this is set up, right? And this is how it works. The amount of angry DMs and comments and messages I would get from people saying that I should remove it because it is something that's already known, and also at the same time, nobody else does it, so why do you do it? You'll be amazed. So now, people don't even know the partnership program exists. And also, that mindset, right, doesn't take into account any new people that turn up. So in that scenario, like, what do I do? Do I try and, fix it in a certain way? Or do I try and, go with my gut and do what I think's right? Or do I, listen to the people who are saying these things and go with them. There's not really a true answer, unfortunately. Hey, awesome Canadian, nice to see you, man. How you doing? Hopefully life's good. Hopefully you're doing well. So yeah, I hope that's an explanation. You know, if anybody actually wants, I suppose, creditation individually for these things, I mean, I can start doing something like putting names or something in the description of the video or something like that, but I don't know what else I can do. You know, there's not really a fix to something like that, because no matter how you do it, you're gonna hurt somebody, right? Things are alright, awesome Canadian. I have a little bit of some kind of viral infection, but apart from that, we're doing good. You know, we've done a lot of everything is really good. Everything is going well. Looking forward to kind of the future of these things, and just gonna be fully committing to doing way more workout stuff when I feel a bit better. Really bored of viral infections. Hopefully we can find a world where viruses don't exist. But we're not there yet. Then we have Mean Greenie. Most of the time, I don't see any timestamps for these talks, much less the two which have been done for this one. Any clues, anybody? I think pretty much all of the tech talks have timestamps now, apart from some of the older ones. Yeah, go ahead, awesome Canadian, why not? Spread the love. Have you been watching the show, by the way? We watched the first 3 episodes of the Fallout show. It's been pretty good so far. It's a bit all over the place and wacko, but, you know, it's Fallout. Yeah, it should be quite good. Yeah, the timestamps are done by volunteers, so people who volunteer their time to do it. I don't have time specifically to do the timestamps, because I don't make enough money from this stuff to dedicate more time to it than I already do. I already dedicate about 60 hours a week to, whether it's streaming, making content. Actually, no, it's probably more than that nowadays. But yeah, 60 hours a week to it, to be able to sit down and, you know, sort that stuff out. So people volunteer and do it, like Maxol, Kawam-chan, TK, and, you know, I always offer, if people want to do it, I can gift them games, I can give them some kind of like monetary thing, like to be able to do it, because at the end of the day, all this stuff is kind of a lost leader. I get that I pour more money into it than comes out, so like basically on average when it comes to like the giveaway, well, not the giveaways, but if people do the timestamps, usually like they get, you know, I give them an option of like, do they want to pick up like a bundle of stuff from like Fanatical, or do they want to like maybe pick up some games. Like Kawam-chan got like Helldivers, and then also for a lot of the weeks ended up getting a lot of like Hearts of Iron DLCs, which overall were like on average, you know, $20 to $25, or like $40 or $50 for the Helldivers, right? And last week, you know, I got a bundle of games for Maxor for doing them, which was really nice of him, which was like all the Stalker games, right? So I think 4 Stalker games or 3 Stalker games, which is about $10 to $15. On average, these talks make me about $4 before YouTube takes its cut. So like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so I could probably get somebody to do it, right? But I don't see the ROI in doing something like that to that level. So it's better for people to do it, and then I, you know, give them something for doing it, right? Like, I understand the idea of investing in yourself to be able to get, you know, stuff out of it. But when it comes to this, you know, online stuff, and when it comes to a lot of the stuff around it, the monetary aspect just doesn't pay for itself unless you're on very much the higher end. And the amount of time you have to put into these things just isn't really worth it. Like, it would be much better for me, instead of doing all of this stuff, to work a second job, right? Or put more time into my standard job. But, you know, that's not why I'm here. I enjoy doing this. This brings, like, kind of balance to my life, which may sound a little bit weird, since it's a lot of time, but then you'd have to understand the different aspects of my life and how it all works and yada yada yada, right? So yeah, it's just, it's one of those things which, you know, is quite hard to kind of put together, but hopefully is understood why, you know, certain things don't happen in certain ways, because it's usually the money isn't there, right? And I already pour a decent amount of money into this stuff, and also a lot of my time into this stuff. So adding more is not something that can be done, especially with other factors going on in my life, right? Good afternoon, Marlo. Nice to see you. Nice to see you too as well, Drip. Hopefully you're doing alright today. What's consistent tank that's rank 3+ and gets 5 kills easily? I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm not really good at stuff like that. Friends come over Sunday, then binge watch at home theater. Oh, nice. That'll be fun. Yeah, I'll be quiet about the show. I know it's just come out, so not gonna spoil it for people. But yeah, so you know, it's pretty much as simple as that, right? So that's why the ways work how they do. Then we have Carl Alex. If we cared about all that war crime stuff, then how come we are happy to exclude the communists from this? How come we are happy to exclude the communists from this? If you want to talk about stories, you should include stories like the one told by the UK units handing over the Cossacks who were repatriated to the Soviet Union, a place many of them had fled from after the Russian Civil War ended in 1923. Far from all were combatants, several of them were not even Soviet citizens. About 2 million were handed over to the Soviet Union and sent to death camps. Yep, the communists were shit, I agree. The problem that you have is they won the war. And because they won the war, that means that they get absolved from many different things. Sucks, right? So yeah, that's the major thing. Once again, it doesn't matter about any of that. It never has, right? It matters about public perception, and always has done. A lot of history is whitewashed in that way, right? If it was up to me, I wouldn't like seeing, you know, dictators celebrated, or, you know, very, very aggressive regimes, which ended up killing a lot of people. You know, I don't want any of those being celebrated. But the fact is, one side won, one side lost. And one side was based around an ideology of absolutely assassinating, as well, not just assassinating, but murdering everything that wasn't them, right? And I understand that if you have a look at a lot of literature around communism, that's not something that you'll find. It wasn't based on race, it was based on belief. Which, depending on who you talk to, is as bad, but it's just literally the way that the world sees things. Like, I don't know how else to put it. We can argue all day, every day, about if it's fair or if it isn't fair. It isn't about if it's fair or not. We all understand it's not fair. But the fact is, there are certain countries which straight up have laws against these things, and other countries which don't. Right? And it's just how things are perceived. That's all. Nothing else. Nothing else matters. Sorry. And it sucks, but it is how it is. So you can try and change these things. You can change how things are being perceived, or how history is looked at by people. The way that you do that is through governance and through education, not through a video game. This is just like the thing with Taiwan and China all over again. where there was just a bunch of people, for some reason mostly Scandinavians, who were really annoyed about the fact that Taiwan didn't have its true flag in the game, even though they did, because it was the ROC flag, which was what was being represented. They didn't know anything about the Enlightenment that happened in China. They don't know anything about the rejigging of all of their history over the years and how it was all set up, because they wanted to paint a better picture of not just Mao, but also everything around. They didn't know anything about that. They were just pissed off because it wasn't the flag that they thought it should be. Right? Public perception doesn't work like that. I'm sorry, it sucks, it's shit. But if you're an individual company, the one thing you try not do is give people reasons to smash you on the head or shoot you. And this would be one of those things, right? I know it sucks, right? And maybe in like 5 years, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 50 years, it all changes. But we're not there, and we're right here. So these arguments about like, oh, but these guys were as bad, or oh, but you know, this happened here and that happened there, and these guys were as bad in this place, none of it matters. None of it matters. Never has. Never will in these places, right? Because it isn't about the individual thing. It's about the ideology behind it, how it's perceived by the general public, and also at the same time, the area of laws which govern around it. That's all. Nothing else matters, right? You don't have to try and make it more complicated or try and make it so, you know, people in this sphere accept it better or worse. You have a fundamental question to ask. All of those, you have to change. And also, you have to give a reason why it would be positive for a company, which is a private entity, to, in a way, right, celebrate these people. That's all. Especially since a lot of the pages as history are generals, right? So technically apolitical figures from one side. And then you have random propaganda-like ones from the Soviet side. And then people even like engineers and things like that, right? You have to give reasons why it would be beneficial for a company to support these people. And since there are millions of others that they can add instead of adding these and causing even 1 or 2% of controversy, right? There's no point. Like, do you think Alexander Kosmodiansky is going to cause any controversy? No. How about the sister? No. Okay? So let's see. Who else have we got? We have Jan Zumbach, who was a Polish guy fighting for the Royal Air Force. We had Eugene Esmond, you know, a British naval officer. And then you have Mikalova, a USSR, you know, soldier. And also John Campbell. Once again, John Basilone, like, are any of these people, like, at all controversial? They have nothing that is controversial about them at all, right? None of them. Maybe, like, Norman. Maybe that's the most you can go for, right? Desmond Doss, for God's sake. You know? David Curry. There isn't anything about these guys which is in any way controversial. Reginald Mitchell, for God's sake. Right? Maybe they're just picking people, right, who aren't going to cause them any issues that are also historical figures to celebrate. And you have to give them a reason why you want them to pick people which are going to cause them an issue and are going to cause them PR disasters. Right? Hey, Sarge Moon, nice to see you. Santa Claus triggers you? Yeah. He was the loot box profile pic. So yeah, it's straight up as simple as that. Sorry. Like, there's nothing else to be said. If you were in a position where you had a product and you had an opportunity for people to celebrate it, and it was 100% slam dunk, and then you had another opportunity to try and like break a wave and maybe break from the norm where, let's say, 60% of the people would be fine with it and then 40% wouldn't, do you take it? The answer is no every single time. Right? Especially in this context. Especially with how many hit pieces have been written about stupid stuff about War Thunder in the past, trying to discredit it for many different reasons, right? You don't give people ammunition. It's one of the stupidest things to do. So even if it is wrong, right, even or whatever, it doesn't matter. It never has. Please start seeing it from that point of view. I could Sarge Moon, but I like changing my words over and over again, so at least it does something. Somewhere I was saying wannabe. I just want them to put heli EC back in. No point in researching helis with no heli PvP mode. Nobody wants helis in ground, so I'm not going there. There's plenty of people who want helis in ground. Plenty of people play them. You should give it a go. Don't worry about what other people want. Just worry about what you want to do. That's what's more important. It's your experience, not another's. So you enjoy it. The reason why Heli EC was kind of destroyed or didn't exist anymore was because of the fact that the game mode was dead and or dying and hardly anybody played it because of the fact of the dominance of specific vehicles in the game mode, meaning that it was completely worthless playing anything else. Even before the K50, you had the H1Z, you know. Took over the game, completely worthless playing anything else. So, yeah. And you could split it up by BR brackets, but there just wasn't enough people to do it. This PvE mode gives you an opportunity to be able to play it and also not have to deal with anything ridiculous like that. They also, you know, made helicopters more prevalent in ground, you know, in simulator and in realistic, and even in arcade you can play them more now because they gave more options for kill streaks. So overall this has been way more positive because people actually play them. So I didn't play them before because there was no reason to, because you just get all beaten up by one vehicle. It's not very fun. So yeah, the reason why PvE exists is necessity. Not because it is, you know, seen as a great solution or anything like that. It is straight up just necessity and nothing else. And we have Dino. Is it me or Gaijin should change the Chinese tech tree into Asian Alliance? Where you would have Indian, Thai, Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean, and other Asian countries, ground vehicles, and planes. It's only you, I think. Yeah, that would be a bit weird. I'm sure there are many factors into working out what should go into a tech tree. One of the big factors for me is, does the tech tree flow well, and does it have vehicles at pretty much every BR, and does it have holes in its BR areas? In my opinion, China does not have that. What nation would I like to see awesome Canadian? North Korea or South Korea would be my ones. I think that would be pretty fun. But yeah, the simple thing is in order for a nation to get added to a tech tree, there needs to be a reason to do it. And usually that reason is because the nation has holes in it, or because it's missing specific vehicles, or anything like that. China isn't. China's not missing anything. China's actually in a very, very positive setup. So Why would you add stuff to it when you could add that stuff to other nations to make it more positive for them? Wouldn't it be better to do that? You know? Wouldn't it be better to sort that stuff out? China don't need anything, but Japan does. Japan needs a lot. And some of those other minor nations, like France, need a lot. Oh, Switzerland to France would be nice too. So yeah, that's what I would be more focused on, you know? Like, that would be, you know, the thing to do. And we have Charlie Harris. Ooh. Sorry, I should have been paying attention. Just need to shoot this guy down for a sec. I'd want him to be sub-trees. I don't think I'd want them to be a combined tree. Well, I mean, it could technically work. But I'd rather have a South Korean sub-tree of probably America or Japan, and then a North Korean of China or somebody else. Does Spain and Portugal have anything nice? Spain has some very fun HA aircraft, which are quite fun. Tech, in the last tech talk, you may recall I posted a comment on possibly adding for a new page of history on a Luftwaffe pilot, Hans Joachim Marseille, known as the Star of Africa, who fought honorably and bravely in North Africa. I was only trying to say, why don't we see pages of history of him? Because he fought for the Wehrmacht and the Nazis. He fought for Nazi Germany, that's why. It's actually kind of surprising they added the French guy in. Where is he? This guy. Marcel Albert. Because Marcel Albert actually fought for Vichy France for a little bit. E.g. for the Axis. But yeah. But instead of reading the whole comment, you chose to completely go off topic and go on about Nazi war crimes and Nazi experiments and other horrible things. And on top of that, you didn't even read the whole comment. Yeah, because it's pointless. Because it's the same thing I've heard a million times. Like, you have to understand, the interaction that you have with me, I've probably had before. And when I see specific narratives getting pushed about certain things, it clicks in my head that I've had these conversations previously with other people. We literally had this exact same conversation 2 weeks ago about Rommel, for God's sake. It's okay because he was a good Nazi. And he actually wasn't a true Nazi because he wasn't ever part of the party. He was just friends with everybody who was part of the party and could only get into the position he was by, you know, having those relationships and believing in those things. But it's okay because he didn't sign the paper, so it's all good. Oh yeah, and he tried to, you know, murder the main guy, you know, many years after seeing him as a good friend, like a decade after. So yeah, so it's the same thing. Sorry. Like, that's why sometimes I just don't bother. Also, please do your research on him. That's all I'm asking. You can disagree with me. I don't care. I'm simply saying it would be nice just to have this one page of history on him. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. He wasn't a member of the party. He even said to an SS meant the party would not be worth joining, is all I'm saying. Now, I'm trying not to be rude by any stretch. I'm simply saying do your research on him. Make your opinion. Don't just jump to conclusions. I'm not defending Nazi ideals. Yes, I'm reading the text on the right-hand side. The guy fought for Nazi Germany. Doesn't matter what he believed in. Through his actions, he pushed forward the Nazi ideals. Sorry. There's not much else to say. Or you could go back, like, you know, a few minutes. So far, we've had the, oh, it's not that bad people. We've also had the, oh, but everybody did that, so we shouldn't take it into account people. We've then had the straight deniers, and now we have this level. Right? So you have all the conversations right there. Right? It sucks. Even if the guy isn't part of the party, right? Even if he disagrees with the ideas, which he definitely didn't, because if he did, he would have ended up in jail. But let's just say he did. Let's just say he disagreed with all of them, okay? Right? It doesn't matter, because he still fought for the side. He still fought for the ideology. He still fought to expand it. And go back to like the previous 4 or 5 points that I made on the other one. Okay? You can keep like saying there are good people or there are people who should be celebrated, but just think about it, okay? Not many people look at the context. Not many people look into people like this. Not many people are as invested in looking at people. What they'll go is, why are you making a profile picture? And why are you supporting a regime that murdered millions of people? Right? They already do it now with the Soviet stuff. If you do it with the German stuff, right? Especially during the Second World War, who were actively just massacring millions of people, I don't know what the hell you can do. Like, you gotta understand it, right? You gotta understand the differences between them. And if you don't, that's fine, you know? But that's just how it goes. Yeah, and we've talked about before. If the issue is you want Germans in the pages of history, right? There are 2 ways that you do it, okay? You either do the unnamed soldier from the First World War, right? Just like you did from, like, Britain. You do a statue of an unnamed soldier. Because technically in the First World War, as we've said, it wasn't really a wrong side. It was more of a societal issue and a hierarchical issue in the First World War, right? And we all agree with that at this point. You know, the unnecessary war at the end of the day. Or you do somebody who wasn't part of the Nazi, like, regime. So, you know, somebody who's a bit more modern. Because I'm sure there's at least one person in Germany that has done something after the Second World War militarily. Yeah? Yeah, you could do something like the Red Baron. Like, literally. Nobody would make a fuss. Because the ideology that he followed wasn't around murdering a certain set of people and rapidly expanding, so you just, because you believe everybody else is inferior. Right? So yeah, you just do that. You'll have a much better time doing something like that. Much better time. You know? So why do that? Why do we have to focus on people who are part of that regime? Even if they're not sat there, you know, color-coded and, you know, all of this stuff. Why do you have to find those types of people when there are so many others which are in such much better places? Why? You must ask yourself. Right? Because there's plenty of them. And plenty of them which are kind of cool people. Even like designers and things like that you could do from the modern age. Right? But nah. Instead, we're just focused on people who fought for a regime which massacred and murdered millions of people and caused one of the greatest atrocities we've seen in the last 200 years, if not ever. Like, it's crazy to me. But yeah, c'est la vie. I would honestly, one of the things that's very important in these setups is to look at public perception and look at how people will actually resonate with these different things. and how they react to these different things. And I would honestly say it would be worth having a look at some interviews. It would be worth having a look at a lot of debates which were had in the early 2000s and also early 1990s about these issues, and maybe you'll understand why a lot of people think like this. It'll help out a lot. Okay? It should be done. And the last one, which is from Goober, chicken nuggest. So there you go. A scholar and a a scholar and a lover. Simple as. Not much else you can say about that one. Right, so that's the last one on the tech talk. I'm sorry my voice is kind of shot. Hopefully it'll be better by next week. But I've been running on fumes with it for a while, so probably take Monday off just to chill it, or, you know, to focus on something else. But if you guys have any questions on the stream about anything, this would be the time to do it. So we can, then we're gonna start spading the 2A7. Should be quite fun. There we go. With the Floracrad, where hopefully we can do okay with the vehicle. Alright, let's see. I suppose I should throw in this thing. Favorite holiday celebrated in War Thunder? Oh, like the space one? Favorite holiday? Probably German Unity Day. German Unity Day generally has quite a lot of cool stuff with it. I like German Unity Day quite a lot. Usually has some good deals and usually quite a nice decal or something like that in it, which works well. I'm a fan. There we go. When are you gonna finish spading the Magax? After we've done the 2A7, I'm gonna play the Hydra. But yeah, we're gonna get this one done first. Have a bit of fun with it. Alright, well, thank you for watching the Tech Talk, and we'll be back next week with a similar thing. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.